So yeah, volunteering. Basically, no LARP can run without volunteers, aside from the organizing crew who do all the administrative stuff, who write the game, who basically are the creative people with the ideas, with the setup, etc. You need people to help you run the LARP, be it NPCs who interact with the players in some way, people who support on the infrastructural side, even the, let's say, cannon fodder NPCs for combat LARPs that don't have any conversational interaction with the players, with the participants, but instead who, yeah, basically just are kind of entertainment for the regular players. My experience is mostly based on German LARPs, with a few international ones sprinkled in the Czech Republic, in Sweden. So that's basically the focus and the field where I'm coming from. All pictures that I use are from Conquest of Mythothea. I think definitely the biggest LARP event in Germany, and as far as I know, the biggest one in Europe. So volunteering, yeah, the German way. So mostly focused on how we tend to do it in Germany, but I've seen some similarities in Sweden as well as in the Czech Republic. So basic options is, how did we do it in the 90s? How are we still doing it today, at least in Germany, since we climbed down from the trees and found LARPing as a hobby? There are 3 different basic setups as a volunteer. You either participate as a general volunteer, mostly an NPC. You pay a reduced fee, basically just the attendance fee. In most cases, just the administrative costs of the location. So if you need to rent a location, you pay per capita. So the NPCs pay their per capita share, and all the other costs associated with the event, for props, for equipment, running costs, etc., are covered by the player side. That's kind of the norm, especially in medieval and fantasy LARPs, where you need a certain number of NPCs for the game and for the idea to actually work as a hero's journey for the players. The second option that you usually have is if you volunteer to provide a vital service for the event. So let's say you're cooking at the event. You're one of the drivers who drives around equipment in a van. People who do setup and tear down of the location. So all these people that are working hard in the background, but who are only at best glimpsed by the players, by the paying visitors or paying players. In these cases, most of the time, you get to the event for free, but you still have to cover your own costs. So you have to pay for gas yourself, and anything that you spend for the event for your own use, usually you don't get reimbursed for that. Of course, if you cook for the event, the organizers will pay for the supply stuff. And the third thing, and that I keep noticing in the last 5 to 10 years in an increasing number, is if you play one of the more important NPCs, the characters who actively interact with the players, you tend to get to attend for free, can come for free, and some part of your costume, or most of it, depending on the organizers, will be provided by the organizers, but you're usually expected to work on this important NPC costume yourself. So you do have costs related to the event, related to volunteering, but you don't pay any attendance fee. And then let's go into more details on, yeah, the kind of volunteers. The first one, the general volunteers, I called them in the previous slide, is the cannon fodder. So fighting NPCs. If you need a horde of undead at a fantasy event, if you need a group of Red Army soldiers at Legion in the Czech Republic, a lot of these characters are not supposed to actively interact and to communicate with the players. So expectations for this kind of volunteer are low on both sides. On the side of the players, they say, okay, these are the guys that we will have our fights with. And from the volunteer side, that's basically they're just there for the fighting game. They're then most of the time not really interested in creating drama for the players, in interacting with the players, aside from hitting them with foam swords. And usually you don't really care about what is happening in the story, what drama has been created, what's the bigger storyline, why are we doing this, why are we the baddies. So cannon fodder NPCs are, yeah, like the extras at the movie set, and they're fine with that. Most of the time they have basic equipment, expect the organizers to provide most of their costumes and gear, and the main exception for that that I experienced is, on the one hand, in the Czech Republic, for example, at Legion and also at De La Bête, is where the organizers actually create characters with a backstory, with a kind of a relevance to the major storyline. And the other side, basically the mayhem characters at one of the bigger German LARPs at Conquest, is the Undead Flesh, is one of the main antagonist factions, where people attend every year with playing the same faction and putting a lot of effort into their costumes, creating small backstories that don't necessarily are relevant to the players. So players usually don't necessarily know about these stories, but that way the volunteers create kind of a close-knit community among themselves and interact with these small backstories among themselves without the players even noticing. The next level of NPCs or volunteers are the ones that I call the drama volunteers. Those that are supposed to communicate, those that help the players along with experiencing the journey. That can be the evil overlords, that can be quest givers in a traditional fantasy LARP, that can be relatives out of nowhere, for example at Legion, or for example at De La Bête. So you get to interact with people. You have basically a speaking role at the event, and you can't just cross yourself out saying, yeah, I've been hit often enough, I'm just leaving. You tend to be part of the story. And I noticed that that is something that has been there all the time since I started the game. You always needed characters who interact, and who get some time in the spotlight, who basically, hey, this is your time on the stage, everybody will notice you. In most cases, these people get to attend for free for the bigger characters, or at least most of the costume is provided, especially when the organizers have a specific look in mind and say, yeah, okay, we need to prepare for that because we can't expect the volunteer to provide what we actually want. And the third kind of volunteers that I tend to see in Germany as well as in the Czech Republic are the infrastructure guys. So the people basically, like I put on the screen, though, oh, people need to eat too, we need to take care of that too. So mostly people volunteering of taking care of administrative and infrastructure stuff. That may be cooks, that might be people like game masters, guys, consultants, drivers. So whoever take care that the kind of the back end of the game is running as smoothly as possible. They usually tend not to play at the event at all because they're busy all the time fixing stuff, solving problems nobody expected to happen. And they are from my experience, they are the ones who get reimbursed for incurred costs. So if they have to spend money on supplies, on gas for their cars, etc., they are the ones who tend to get some money back. And this is kind of, let's say, this is getting more recognized in the last few years, and people realize, okay, we can't do it without these people. We don't only need the mayhem slaughter one-shot NPCs. We don't only need the drama NPCs, the drama volunteers. We need the infrastructure guys. So more recognition for infrastructure is something that has been changing in the last few years. In the late 90s, from my impression, was nobody noticed them. Nowadays, they actually get recognized by organizers as well as the actual players. So this is just basically one of the smaller NPC crews at Conquest, one of the undead group. And you see how the costumes are obviously extremely individual. So this is the Mayhem crew. They don't get to have an interactive interaction with the players. It's basically hit them in the head, and then you get hit in the head and you're out and you respawn and come back, just to visualize what I'm talking about. So all these characters, they look good. The costumes are okay, but they don't look like one of the main stage characters. They're the extras. And question is now, is this any different anywhere else than in Germany? And from my experience, all these kind of volunteers that I just spoke about, they're in use all over Europe, be it in Sweden, be it in Denmark, be it in the Czech Republic, Austria, Switzerland, France, Belgium, whatever. So I realized, okay, this is exactly not the German way. It's kind of an evolved system that grew by themselves without anybody aligning with the Belgians and the Germans and the Czech people, saying, okay, this is how we best do it. Basically, just it felt natural. It basically evolved naturally, and it's starting to change. The more LARP is becoming kind of a mainstream hobby, and with more and more recognition required by those people who actually do the volunteering. So nowadays we've got new volunteering concepts coming up that people realize work too and improve the events. There's one kind of that is becoming, especially at the bigger events, more prevalent, is that you volunteer for an event, mostly for infrastructure, running the game as a game master, stuff like that. And you're getting a ticket for free for the next year because you don't have time to actually play the game. So you're saying, okay, next year I'm not going to volunteer. I want to participate in it. And therefore you get a free ticket for it. Epic Empires, for example, does exactly that. If you volunteer at Epic Empires, you're getting the ticket for Epic Empires the next year without having to pay for it. Your spot is guaranteed. Another option that I've seen coming up with smaller events and with events where people say, okay, I want a great event, so I'm willing and able to pay a bit more in participation fees, is that volunteer spots get subsidized. So players basically pay for the volunteers to attend, so the volunteers don't have any costs aside from getting to the location. And this is getting more common, I'd say, at smaller event, at more story-driven event. This is less common at traditional fantasy combat events because there's way too many NPCs, and the price for the players would be most of the time too high to actually justify that. That might change in the future, and I've seen smaller events who try that to subsidize at least part of the tickets, but I don't think this is going to be commonplace for all kind of events. And what I've rarely seen, but what is happening, and what I've seen at Czech events mostly, is that volunteers get a subsidiary for some of their costs, mostly for travel costs, and players basically pay for that with their fee, similar to these attending for free concept, but actually subsidizing NPCs, volunteers, to come to the location to minimize the costs for those people who run the event, who support the event, who help the players having a good time in whatever way, maybe type 2 fun or regular type 1, I'm hitting people with the foam swords fun. So that's the changes that I'm seeing. It's quite rare still in Germany, but I see this kind of aspect of the hobby growing, where people say, okay, recognition and seeing the value in people volunteering, not just saying, yeah, but I'm a customer and they're employees of the supplier. That's pretty rare. So people realize, yeah, okay, we want good service, so we need to support good service, and it's not like the customer is always right. So let's see, did I actually... And to basically visualize that aspect, I use another picture from Conquest, also from the Undead Flesh faction. And these characters that you can see in this picture, these are some of the drama characters. Those people get to interact with the players, who get to talk with them, share stories with them, create stories with the players and for the players. And you see the difference in the costumes that have been created, aside from the Here for the Slaughter and Mayhem NPCs I had in a previous slide. So you actually see a difference in how volunteers look depending on what they do. I didn't include pictures of people in t-shirts, utility vests, and jeans who do the infrastructure work, because everybody knows how people in the modern everyday gear looks like. So that's probably not necessary to share this. But I think no event can run without these three types of volunteers. And I think recognition and seeing, okay, people are basically working at this event to create a great experience. This is something that is on the rise in Germany, but I think, for example, the Czech Republic, with some of the events in the Czech Republic and in Scandinavia, they're further ahead with this. There's a bigger level of recognition of seeing, yeah, I see what you're doing. I appreciate that. This is something where, in my opinion, a lot of German organizers can learn from our neighbors in how to run events, how to create a better experience for everybody involved, and how to create kind of more appreciation from the player participants towards the volunteers. So basically, that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about. That's my experience from LARPing for over 20 years, how stuff were and how stuff mostly is, and how stuff is currently evolving around volunteers. So thanks for listening to me ramble. And I'd say that's it. That's all that I have to present.
Thank you. Thank you, Gregor. It was really interesting because a lot of people are volunteers during LARPs. So I think it was really fine to hear it from you. There are some questions by our public. So the first one is, I feel like you can't evaluate the volunteering question without looking at who's at the other, and who, if anybody, gets actual paychecks out of the project.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And at least in Germany, there's only basically two organizers who run LARPs as a business. And these are basically the two biggest events. It's Drachenfest and Conquest, where there are actually companies behind the event. So there's usually nobody involved who actually gets a paycheck. But the trend is that people try not to basically put too much of their own money into an event, into a LARP, and trying to cover all associated costs via the participation fees. So usually nobody gets a paycheck. I mean, organizations, associations have costs that are related to paychecks, like tax advisors, if they have to pay tax. So that way, if you pay your tax advisor, of course, he gets a paycheck out of that. But usually the organizers themselves, they don't get a paycheck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And the second question is also about the price and about the pay. If volunteers got paid with tickets for the next year event, it is considered worth all the work compared to ordinary ticket price.
If you look at regular hourly salaries, objectively, it's not. Basically, because the hourly rate is abysmal, if you're honest with yourself. So from my experience, you should only volunteer if you decide, okay, I'm happy to spend a lot of my personal time for very little monetary compensation. So in my experience, it's okay, I get paid with a ticket for an event that I wanted to attend it anyway. So it's more of a token of gratitude, but not yeah, you couldn't say they get paid for it. It's more of, okay, token of appreciation. Thanks for helping out. Next time you can attend for free if you want to.
Okay, thank you. Next question is also, can you tell a bit about the ticket prices?
They're mostly going to focus on the German ticket prices for events. German LARPs pretty much depend mostly on location choice. So if you're just having a LARP, fantasy LARP event somewhere in the woods, a 3-day event, Friday to Sunday, can run between 60 and 80 euros per person. If you have to rent a castle, it can, of course, prices increase, 180 to 200 euros for a weekend. And the main festival LARPs, which are Conquest, Drachenfest, and Epic Empires, I think cheapest tickets, player tickets, start at around 100 euros for 5 days and go up to 160, 170 euros. Though you need to keep in mind that basically all these events are in the woods, so you don't have a castle that has been rented or something like that. So prices tend to vary regarding the size of the event and the location. These are the main factors.